Hi guys, I just wanted to let you all know that tomorrow, May 5th, is a global day of giving and generosity. And I have actually chosen tonight's book because it reminds me of a little girl's heart of generosity, the compassion she showed, the kindness, and how much of a difference it makes in people's lives, and how giving and generosity is kind of eternal. It keeps going on and on and on. It never runs out. And nobody can steal your heart and your joy. Extra yarn. On a cold afternoon in a little cold town where everywhere looked either like the white of snow or the soot from chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with yarn of every color. So she went home and she knit herself a sweater. And when she was done, she still had extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for her dog, Mars, too. And she still had extra yarn. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate. But it turned out he was jealous, so Annabelle knit him a sweater. And even after she made a sweater for Nate and his dog and herself and her dog Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet, quiet," shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone. Annabelle, Annabelle, that sweater of yours is terrible, terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around and looking at you and your sweater." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," said Annabelle, "so they won't keep turning around." "Impossible, impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You possibly can't." But it turned out she could. And she did. Even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and her dad, for Mr. Pendleton and Mrs. Pendleton, for Dr. Palmer and for little Louis. And she still had extra yarn. She made sweaters for everyone except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or pants, and he would stand in the snow in his shorts up to his knees. No sweater for me, thanks. No sweater for me, thanks, Annabelle," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat instead. And even then, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she made sweaters for dogs and all the cats and all the animals too. Soon people thought, soon Annabelle, she will run out of yarn. But it turned out she didn't. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. Things began to change in that little town. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn. And people came to visit from all over the world to see the sweaters that Annabelle had made and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day, an archduke, who was very, very fond of clothes, sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1,000,000. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The archduke's mustache quivered. $2 million, he said. Annabelle shook her head. No thanks, no thanks." $10 million, he shouted. "Take it or leave it." "Leave it," said Annabelle. "I won't sell my box of yarn." And she didn't. So that night, the archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house, and they stole the box of yarn and took it to the archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea. Back to his castle, he sat down in his favorite chair and played his favorite song, then took out the box, lifted the lid, and he looked inside. His mustache quivered, it shivered, and he trembled. The Archduke hurled the box out the window and yelled, little girl, the box is empty. You will not be happy again." But it turns out Annabelle was happy, and the box came back to her, and no one stole her joy. The end.